YouTube thing live as well. There we go. Alrighty, there we go. Let's switch our scenes. Well, you know, I forgot to do my hair. That's okay. We'll look like a bit of a mad scientist today. It's okay. I'm down for that. How are you all doing? How are you all doing today? And it is good morning and an afternoon. Oh boy, it just got real light in here all of a sudden. Let me just adjust my webcam here real fast. I'm totally blowing out. Advanced settings. There we go. Oh. Get that forehead shine under control. There we go. That's a little more reasonable, I think. That's a little more reasonable. What just crashed my upload? Yeah, I don't know what you mean. All right. Stream looks fine to me. Okay, but there we go. Anyway, well, hello on a Friday. I don't normally do a Friday show. Don't normally do anything on a Friday. So, well, good morning. Here we are. Yeah. So, yeah. Generally, I take Friday and Saturday off, and then we. Oh wow, I'm a little jerky right there. All right. Yeah, generally, I take Friday and Saturday off, and just to let my voice recuperate from the Monday through Thursday shenanigans that's going on. And then we come back with Short Story Sunday. But I know it's a bit of a special day today, I guess. We got well, yeah, last night California got their official lockdown and chill notification. So here we are. And a few people asking me if I'd want to come in and do some Friday readings. So there we go. So I didn't want to get back into Right Ho Jeeves. That's the comedy where we're going to be continuing with on a Monday through Thursday thing. But is my stream super choppy for everyone else, or is that just my internet? I can't tell. I got the Shadowtronics just said that just crashed your upload, and I don't know what that means. So is it running? Yes doesn't help either. I don't know what that means. I need some information here. It went to shit when I went live on YouTube. Well, no, it's got nothing to do with going live on YouTube, because that's going through Restream. Do. Okay, well, we'll see how that goes. I restarted it. I think the only thing which might have caused that issue was adjusting the webcam. Because, yeah, doing the thing on the YouTube would make no difference. All right. But anyway, let's find something to read. I guess that's the plan. That is the plan. Picked out something here. Where are we at? Looking at the wrong one. This is what we picked up. This is a brand new one. Astounding Stories of Super Science. Yeah, I didn't want to continue with the PG Wodehouse's Wooster and Jeeves stuff there. Let's just change our title. Astounding Stories by Various. There we go. Very good. Okay, all right. So yeah, we'll try and find a decent story in this. In the meantime, though, if yeah, I'm going to keep plugging this occasionally through there. Here's my tweet from this morning there, just a few minutes ago. If anyone wants to share that over to their favorite live or a social media source, that would be great. And yeah, throw it into Facebook, throw it into Twitter, throw it into Instagram. I don't know if Snapchat you can do that. I should look into that at some point. But there we go. This is what we're gonna do. So let's take a little look in here and see what's going on. This is Old Crompton's Secret, Spawn of the Stars, The Corpse on the Grating, Creatures of the Light, The Thief of Time. That sounds pretty good. How long is that? Captain Meek. We've read something by Captain Meek before. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 30, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 40, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, let's do that one. The Thief of Time. That one sounds good. I don't know. The Thief of Time. That man never entered and stole that money, as the picture shows. Unless he managed to make himself invisible. Don't know what's going on with that. Is this supposed to be an age? Oh yeah, I guess it is. This top of it's lopped off. Okay, all right. Harvey Winston, paying teller of the First National Bank of Chicago, stripped the band from a bundle of $20 bills, counted out 17 of them, and added them to the pile on the counter before him. Then that little box with a thing that would have been where a picture was, which has not been included for a variety of reasons. 1,231 tens, he read from the payroll change slip before him. The paymaster of the Kramer Packing Company nodded an assent, and Winston turned to the stacked bills in his rear currency rack. He picked up a handful of bundles and turned back to the grill. His gaze swept the counter where, a moment before, he had stacked the 20s, and his jaw dropped. "You got those 20s, Mr. Trier?" he asked. "Got them? Of course not. How could I?" replied the paymaster. "There they are." His voice trailed off into nothingness as he looked at the empty counter. "I must have dropped them," said Winston as he turned. He glanced back at the rear rack where his main stock of currency was piled. He stood paralyzed for a moment, then reached under the counter and pushed a button. The bank resounded instantly to the clangor of gongs, and huge steel grills shot into place with a clang, sealing all doors and preventing anyone from entering or leaving the bank. The guards sprang to their station with drawn weapons, and from the inner offices, the bank officials came swarming out. The cashier, followed by 2 men, hurried to the paying teller's cage. "What is it, Mr. Winston?" he cried. "I've been robbed," gasped the teller. "Who by? How?" demanded the cashier. I don't know, sir," stammered the teller. "I was counting out Mr. Trier's payroll, and after I had stacked the 20s, I turned to get the 10s. When I turned back, the 20s were gone." "Where had they gone?" asked the cashier. "Oh, I don't know, sir. Mr. Trier was as surprised as I was, and then I turned back, thinking I had knocked them off the counter, and I saw at a glance that there was a big hole in my back racks. You can see yourself, sir." The cashier turned to the paymaster. "Is this a practical joke, Mr. Trier?" he demanded sharply. Of course not," replied the paymaster. "Winston's grill was closed. It still is. Granted that I might have reached the 20s he had piled up, but how could I have gone through a grill and taken the rest of the missing money without his seeing me? The money disappeared almost instantly. It was there a moment before, for I noticed when Winston took the 20s from his rack that it was full." "But someone must have taken it," said the bewildered cashier. "Money doesn't walk off of its own accord or vanish into thin air." A bell interrupted his speech. "Oh, there are the police," he said with an air of relief. "I'll let them in." The smaller of the 2 men who had followed the cashier from his office when the alarm had sounded stepped forward and spoke quietly. His voice was low and well-pitched, yet it carried a note of authority and power that held his auditor's attention when he spoke. "Good morning, Jelly Buns." The voice harmonized with the man. The most noticeable point about him was the inconspicuousness of his voice and manner, yet there was a glint of steel in his grey eyes that told of enormous force in him. "I don't believe that I would let them in for a few moments, Mr. Rogers," he said. "I think that we are up against something a little different from the usual bank robbery." "But, Mr. Carnes," protested the cashier, "we must call in the police in a case like this, and the sooner they take charge, the better chance there will be of apprehending the thief." "Suit yourself," replied the little man with a shrug of his shoulders. "I merely offered my advice." "Will you take charge, Mr. Carnes?" asked the cashier. "I can't supersede the local authorities in a case like this," replied Carnes. "The Secret Service is primarily interested in the suppression of counterfeiting and the enforcement of certain federal statutes, but I will be glad to assist the local authorities to the best of my ability, provided they desire my help. My advice to you would be to keep out the patrolmen who are demanding admittance and get in touch with the chief of police. I would ask that his best detective, together with an expert fingerprint photographer, be sent there before anyone else is admitted. If the patrolmen are allowed to wipe their hands over Mr. Winston's counter, they may destroy valuable evidence." "Oh, you're right, Mr. Carnes," exclaimed the cashier. "Mr. Jervis, will you tell the police that there is no violence threatening, and ask them to wait for a few minutes? I'll telephone the chief of police at once." All right. If for those who just popped in, we just started this story a couple of minutes ago. They were counting out some money at a bank for a big payroll withdrawal, and the money literally just vanished. Yeah, and it's called the Thief of Time, or the Time Thief, I think is the name of this one here. It's going to be good. It's going to be good. Yeah, we don't normally do short story. We don't usually have a book reading show on Fridays at all, Fridays or Saturdays. But here we are. Just keeping it chill, for the weekend. As the cashier hurried away to his telephone, Carnes turned to his companion, who had stood an interested, although silent, spectator of the scene. His companion was a marked contrast to the Secret Service operator. He stood well over 6 feet in height, and his protruding jaw and shock of unruly black hair combined with his massive shoulders and chest to give him the appearance of a man who labored with his hands, until one looked at them. His hands were in strange contrast to the rest of him. Long, slim, mobile hands they were, with tapering, nervous fingers. The hands of a thinker or of a musician. Telltale splotches of acid told of hours spent in a laboratory, a tale that was confirmed by the almost imperceptible stoop of his shoulders. "Do you agree with my advice, Dr. Bird?" asked Carnes deferentially. The noted scientist, who from his laboratory in the Bureau of Standards had sent forth many things in the realms of chemistry and physics, and who, incidentally, had been instrumental in solving some of the most baffling mysteries which the Secret Service had been called upon to face, grunted. "It didn't do any harm," he said, "but it is rather a waste of time. The thief wore gloves." "How in thunder do you know that?" demanded Carnes. "It's merely common sense. A man who can do what he did had to have at least some rudiments of intelligence, and even the feeble-minded crooks know enough to wear gloves nowadays." "Not all." Carnes stepped a little closer to the doctor. "Another reason why I didn't want patrolmen tramping round," he said in an undertone, "is this. If Winston gave the alarm quickly enough, the thief is probably still in the building." "Oh, he's a good many miles away by now," replied Dr. Bird, with a shrug of his shoulders. Carnes' eyes opened widely. "Why? How? Who? he stammered. "Have you any idea of who did it or how it was done?"
Possibly I have an idea," replied Dr. Bird with a cryptic smile. "My advice to you, Carnes, is to keep away from the local authorities as much as possible. I want to be present when Winston and Trier are questioned, and I may possibly wish to ask a few questions myself. Use your authority that far, but no farther. Don't volunteer any information, and especially don't let my name get out. We'll drop the counterfeiting case we were summoned here on for the present, and look into this a little on our own hook. I will want your aid, so don't get tied up with the police."
"At that, we don't want the police crossing our trail at every turn," protested Carnes.
"Oh, they won't," promised the doctor. "They will never get any evidence on this case, if I am right, and neither will we. For the present. Our stunt is to lie low and wait for the next attempt of this nature, and thus accumulate some evidence and some idea of where to look."
"Will there be another attempt?" asked Carnes.
"Oh, surely. You don't expect a man who got away with a crime like this to quit operations just because a few flat-feet run around and make a hullabaloo about it, do you? I may be wrong in my assumption, but if I am right, the most important thing is to keep all reference to my name or position out of the press reports."
The cashier hastened up to them.
Detective Captain Sturvant will be here in a few minutes with a photographer and some other men," he said. "Is there anything that we can do in the meantime, Mr. Carnes?"
"I would suggest that Mr. Trier and his guard and Mr. Winston go into your office," replied Carnes. "My assistant and I would like to be present during the questioning, if there are no objections."
"Oh, I didn't know you had an assistant with you," answered the cashier.
Carnes indicated Dr. Bird. "This gentleman is Mr. Berger, my assistant," he said. "Do you understand?"
Certainly. I'm sure there'll be no objection to your presence, Mr. Carnes," replied the cashier as he led the way to his office.
A few minutes later, Detective Captain Sturtevant. All right. A few minutes later, Detective Captain Sturtevant of the Chicago Police was announced. He acknowledged the introductions gruffly and got down to business at once.
What were the circumstances of the robbery?" he asked.
Winston told his story, Trier and the guard confirming it.
"Oh, pretty thin,"
snorted the detective when they had finished. He whirled suddenly on Winston.
"Where did you hide the loot?" he thundered.
"Why, what do you mean?" gulped the teller.
"Just what I said," replied the detective. "Where did you hide the loot?"
I didn't hide it anywhere," said the teller. "It was stolen."
"You had better think up a better one," sneered Sturtevant. "If you think that you can make me believe that that money was stolen from you in broad daylight, with 2 men in plain sight of you who didn't see it, you might just as well get over it. I know that you have some hiding place where you have slipped the stuff, and the quicker you come clean and spill it, the better it will be for you. Where did you hide it?"
I didn't hide it," cried the teller, his voice trembling. "Mr. Trier can tell you that I didn't touch it from the time I laid it down until I turned back."
"That's right," replied the paymaster. "He turned his back on me for a moment, and when he turned back it was gone." "So you're in on it too, are you?" said Sturtevant.
"What do you mean?" demanded the paymaster hotly.
"Oh, nothing at all," replied the detective. "Of course Winston didn't touch it, and it disappeared, and you never saw it go, although you were within 3 feet of it all the time. Did you see anything?" he demanded of the guard.
Nothing that I'm sure of," answered the guard. "I thought that a shadow passed in front of me for an instant, but when I looked again it was gone." Dr. Bird sat forward suddenly. "What did this shadow look like?" he asked.
"It wasn't exactly a shadow," said the guard. "It was as if a person had passed suddenly before me, so quickly that I couldn't see him. I seemed to feel that there was someone there, but I didn't rightly see anything." Did you notice anything of the sort? Demanded the doctor of Tria. Oh, I don't know, replied Tria thoughtfully. Now that Williams has mentioned it, I did seem to feel a breath of air, or emotion, as though something had passed in front of me. I didn't think of it at the time. Was this shadow opaque enough to even momentarily obscure your vision? Went on the doctor. Oh, not that I'm conscious of. It was just a breath of air such as a person might cause by passing very rapidly. What made you ask Trier if he had the money when you turned around? Asked the doctor of Winston. Say. Oh, who's the detective? Oh, boy. This is the doctor. What made you ask Trier if he had the money when you turned around? Asked the doctor of Winston. Say, broke in the detective, who the devil are you? And what do you mean by breaking into my examination and stopping it? Carnes tossed a leather wallet on the table. There are my credentials, he said in a quiet voice. I am chief of one section of the United States Secret Service, as you will see, and this is Mr. Berger, my assistant. We were in the bank, engaged on a counterfeiting case when the robbery took place. We've had a great deal of experience along these lines, and we're merely anxious to aid you. Sturtevant examined Khan's credentials carefully and returned them. This is a Chicago robbery, he said, and we have had a little experience in robberies and apprehending robbers ourselves. I think we can get along without your help. You've had more experience with robberies than with apprehending robbers, if the papers tell the truth, said Dr. Bird with a chuckle. The detective's face flushed. That'll be enough from you, Mr. Sherlock Holmes, he said. If you open your mouth again, I'll arrest you as a material witness and as a possible accomplice. That sounds like Chicago methods, said Carnes quietly. Now listen to me, Captain. My assistant and I are merely trying to assist you in this case. If you don't desire our assistance, we'll proceed along our own lines without interfering. But in the meantime, remember that this is a national bank and that our questions will be answered. The United States is higher than even the Chicago police force, and I am here under orders to investigate a counterfeiting case. If I desire, I can seal the doors of this bank and allow no one in or out until I have the evidence I desire. Do you understand? Sturtevant sprang to his feet with an oath. But at the sight of the gold badge which Carnes displayed stopped him. Ah, well, he said ungraciously, I suppose that no harm will come of letting Winston answer your fool questions, but I'll warn you that I'll report to Washington that you are interfering with the course of justice and using your authority to aid the getaway of a criminal. That is your privilege, replied Carnes quietly. Mr. Winston, will you answer Mr. Berger's question? I asked because he was right close to the money, and I thought that he might have reached through the wicket and picked it up. Then, too... He hesitated for a moment, and Dr. Bird/Bergen smiled encouragingly. What else? He asked. Why, I can't tell exactly. It just seemed to me that I heard the rustle that bills make when they're pulled across a counter. When I saw them gone, I thought that he might have taken them. Then when I turned toward him, I seemed to hear the rustle of bills behind me, although I knew that I was alone in the cage. When I looked back, the money was gone. Did you see or hear anything like a shadow or a person moving? No. Yes, I don't know. Just as I turned around, it seemed to me that the rear door to my cage had moved, and there may have been a shadow for an instant. I don't know. I hadn't thought of it before. How long after that did you ring the alarm gongs? Not over a second or two. That's all, said Dr. Bird. Well, if your high and mightiness has no further questions to ask, perhaps you will let me ask a few. said Sturtevant. "Go ahead and ask all you wish," replied Dr. Bird with a laugh. "I have all the information I desire here for the present. I may want to ask other questions later, but just now I think we'll be going."
"If you find any strange fingerprints on Winston's counter, I'll be glad to have them compared with our files," said Carnes.
"I'm not bothering with fingerprints," snorted the detective. "This is an open and shut case. There would be lots of Winston's fingerprints there and no others. There isn't even the slightest doubt that this is an inside case, and I have the men I want right here. Mr. Rogers, your bank is closed for today. Everyone in it will be searched, and then all those not needed to close up will be sent away. I'll get a squad of men here to go over your building and locate the hiding place. Your money is still on the premises, unless these men slipped it to a Confederate who got out before the alarm was given. I'll question the guards about that. If that happened, a little sweating will get it out of them."
"Hey, Helga, good morning."
"Are you going to arrest me?" demanded Trier in surprise. "Yes, dearie," answered the detective. "I am going to arrest you and your two little playmates, if these Washington experts will allow me to. You will save a lot of time and quite a few painful experiences if you will come clean now, instead of later." "I demand to see my lawyer and to communicate with my firm," said the paymaster. Time enough for that when I'm through with you," replied the detective. He turned to Carnes. "Have I your gracious permission to arrest these three criminals?" he asked. "Yes, indeed, Captain," replied Carnes sweetly. "You have my gracious permission to make just as big an ass of yourself as you wish. We're going now."
Oh, Helga Marie's, okay, boy. Okay, you got the flu. Okay. And like I said, but you're getting better, all right. There we go. That's the important part. That's the important part. Yeah, I've been down and out a few days there. All righty. Well, I hope your weekend is going to be awesome. Hope it's going to be good. Going to be very good. All right, get back to our story in a minute. Just a minute. LOL. Man, oh man. Let's your Netflix date with your boyfriend and streaming. Oh, there we go. Yeah, that'll be a good time. Do you stream with him? Well, actually, we're gonna work on our story here. 1 second. Adjusting some socks. There we go.
By the way, Captain, said Dr. Bird as he followed Carnes out, when you get through playing with your prisoners and start to look for the thief, here's a tip. Look for a left-handed man who has a thorough knowledge of chemistry, and especially toxicology.
It's easy enough to see that he was left-handed if he pulled that money out through the grill from the positions occupied by Trier and his guard, but what the dickens led you to suspect that he's a chemist and a toxicologist? Asked Carnes as he and the doctor left the bank.
Merely a shrewd guess, my dear Watson, replied the doctor with a chuckle. I'm just as likely to be wrong, but there's a good chance that I'm right. I'm Judge Soling from the method used.
Have you solved the method? Demanded Carnes in amazement. What on earth was it? The more I've thought about it, the more inclined I am to believe that Sturtevant is right and that it's an inside job. It seems to me impossible that a man could have entered in broad daylight and lifted that money in front of 3 men and within sight of 100 more without someone getting a glimpse of him. He must have taken the money out in a grip or a sack or something like that, yet the bank record shows that no one but Trier entered with a grip and no one left with a package for 10 minutes before Trier entered.
There may be something in what you say, Carnes, but I'm inclined to have a different idea. I don't think it's the usual run of bank robbery, and I would rather not hazard a guess just now. I'm going back to Washington tonight. Before I go any further into the matter, I need some rather specialized knowledge that I don't possess, and I want to consult with Dr. Knowles. I'll be back in a week or so, and then we can look into that counterfeiting case, after we get this disposed of."
"What am I to do?" asked Carnes.
"Sit around the lobby of your hotel, eat 3 meals a day, and read the papers. If you get bored, I'd recommend that you pay a visit to the Art Institute and admire the graceful lions which adorn the steps. Artistic contemplations may well improve your culture."
"All right," replied Carnes. "I'll assume a pensive air and moon at the lions, but I might do better if you told me what I was looking for."
"You're looking for knowledge, my dear Carnes," said the doctor with a laugh. "Remember the saying of the sages, 'To the wise man, no knowledge is useless.'"
A huge Martin bomber roared down to a landing at the Maywood Airdrome, and a burly figure descended from the rear cockpit and waved his hand jovially to the waiting Carnes. The Secret Service man hastened over to greet his colleague.
"Have you got that truck I wired you to have...
over to... Okay, there you go.
Have you got that truck I wired you to have ready?" demanded the doctor.
Waiting at the entrance, but say, I've got some news for you."
"It can wait. Get a detail of men and help us unload this ship. Some of the cases are pretty heavy."
"Oh, that's Carnes. I hate it when they do that. You have like 2 established characters, and then the next time they show up, they don't identify some of them when the conversation starts up. Right.
"Have you got that truck I wired you to have ready?" demanded the doctor.
"Waiting at the entrance? But say, I've got some news for you."
"Oh, it can wait. Get a detail of men and help us unload this ship. Some of the cases are pretty heavy."
Carnes hurried off and returned with a gang of laborers who took from the bomber a dozen heavy packing cases of various sizes, several of them labeled either fragile or inflammable in large type. Where did they go, Doctor?" he asked when the last of them had been loaded onto the waiting truck.
"To the First National Bank," replied Dr. Bird, "and Casey here goes with them. You know Casey, don't you, Carnes? He's the best photographer in the Bureau."
Shall I go along, too?" asked Carnes as he acknowledged the introduction.
"Oh, no need for it. I wired Rogers, and he knows the stuff is coming and what to do with it. Unpack as soon as you get there, Casey, and start setting up as soon as the bank closes."
"All right, Doctor," replied Casey as he mounted the truck beside the driver. Where do we go, Doctor?" asked Carnes as the truck rolled off.
"To the Blackstone Hotel for a bath and some clean clothes," replied the doctor. "And now, what is the news you have for me?"
"The news is this, Doctor. I carried out your instructions diligently, and during the daylight hours, the lions have not moved."
"Wow, wow, wow."
Dr. Bird looked contrite.
"I beg your pardon, Carnes," he said. "I really didn't think when I left you so mystified how you must have felt. Believe me, I had my own reasons, excellent ones, for secrecy."
"I have usually been able to maintain silence when asked to," replied Carnes stiffly.
"Oh, my dear fellow, I didn't mean to question your discretion. I know that whatever I tell you is safe, but there are angles to this affair that are so weird and improbable that I don't dare to trust my own conclusions, let alone share them. I'll tell you all about it soon. Did you get those tickets I wired for?"
"Well, of course I got them, but what have 2 tickets to the AAU track meet this afternoon got to do with a bank robbery?"
"One trouble with you, Carnes," replied the doctor with a judicial air, "is that you have no idea of the importance of proper relaxation. Is it possible that you have no desire to see Ladd, this new marvel who is smashing records right and left run? He performs for the Illinois Athletic Club this afternoon, and it would not surprise me to see him lower the world's record again. He has already lowered the record for the 100-yard dash from 9 3/5 to 8 4/5. There's no telling what he'll do."
"Are we going to waste the whole afternoon just to watch a man run?" demanded Carnes in disgust.
"We will see many men run, dear fellow, but there's only one in whom I have a deep abiding interest, and that's Mr. Ladd. Have your binoculars with you?"
"No."
Then by all means beg, borrow, or steal 2 pairs before this afternoon. We might easily miss half the fun without them. Are our seats near the starting line for the sprints?
Yeah, the big demand was for seats near the finish line.
The start will be much more interesting, Carnes. I was somewhat of a minor star in track myself in my college days, and it will be of the greatest interest to me to observe the starting form of this new speed artist. Now, Carnes, don't ask any more questions. I may be barking up the wrong tree, and I don't want to give you a chance to laugh at me. I'll tell you what to watch for at the track.
Oh, this story's all over the place.
The sprinters lined up on the 100-yard mark, and Dr. Bird and Carnes sat with their glasses glued to their eyes, watching the slim figure in the colors of the Illinois Athletic Club, whose large 62 on his back identified him as the new star.
"On your mark," cried the starter. "Get set."
"Ah," cried Dr. Bird. "Did you see that, Carnes?"
The starting gun cracked, and the runners were off on their short grind. Ladd leaped into the lead and rapidly distanced the field, his legs twinkling under him almost faster than the eye could follow. He was fully 20 yards in the lead when his speed suddenly lessened and the balance of the runners closed up the gap he had opened. His lead was too great for them, and he was still a good 10 yards in the lead when he crossed the tape. The official time was posted as 8 9/10 seconds. "Another 30 yards and he would have been beaten," said Carnes as he lowered his glasses.
"That's the way he's won all of his races," replied the doctor. "He piles up a huge lead at first and then loses a good deal at the finish. His speed doesn't hold up. Never mind that, though. It's only an additional point in my favor. Did you notice his jaws just before the gun went?"
"Well, they seemed to clench, and then he swallowed, but most of them did something like that."
"Watch him carefully for the next heat and see if he puts anything into his mouth. That's the important thing."
Dr. Bird sank into a brown study and paid no attention to the next few events, but he came to attention promptly when the final heat of the 100-yard dash was called. With his glasses, he watched Ladd closely as the runner trotted up to the starting line.
"There, Carnes!" he cried suddenly. "Did you see?"
"I saw him wipe his mouth," said Carnes doubtfully.
"All right. Now watch his jaws just before the gun goes."
The final heat was a duplicate of the first preliminary.
Ladd took an early lead, which he held for 3/4 of the distance to the tape. Then his pace slackened, and he finished only a bare 10 yards ahead of the next runner. The time tied his previous world record of 8 4/5 seconds.
"He crunched and swallowed all right, Doctor," said Carnes.
"That's all I wanted to be sure of. Now, Carnes, here's something for you to do. Get hold of the United States Commissioner and get a John Doe warrant and go back to the hotel with it and wait for me. I may phone you at any minute, and I may not. If I don't, wait in your room until you do hear from me. Don't leave it for a minute."
Where are you going, Doctor?"
"I'm going down to congratulate Mr. Ladd. An old track man like me can't let such an opportunity pass."
"I don't know what all this is about, Doctor," replied Carnes, "but I know you well enough to obey orders and to keep my mouth shut until it's my turn to speak." Few men could resist Dr. Bird when he set out to make a favorable impression, and even a world's champion is apt to be flattered by the attention of one of the greatest scientists of his day, especially when that scientist has made an enviable reputation as an athlete in his college days and can talk the jargon of the champion's particular sport. Henry Ladd promptly capitulated to the charm of the doctor and allowed himself to be led away to supper at Bird's club. The supper passed off pleasantly, and when the doctor requested an interview with the young athlete in a private room, he gladly consented. They entered the room together, remained for an hour and a half, and then came out. The smile had left Ladd's face, and he appeared nervous and distracted. The doctor talked cheerfully with him, but kept a firm grip on his arm as they descended the stairs together.
They entered a telephone booth, where the doctor made several calls, and then descended to the street, where they entered a taxi. "Maywood Aerodrome," the doctor told the driver. Alrighty. It's got to be some kind of speed boost chemical there, maybe, or something. Maybe put it into overdrive. Well, what was that story we were reading about the... I think it might have been from H.G. Wells. They developed the chemical to speed you up. And... yeah, so it was essentially just moving so fast that everything looked like like it was moving in like real super slow motion. And then it wears off after a while. That's what I'm thinking is what this kind of thing might be. Good morning, Paul Quinn. Good morning. How are you this morning? Here we go, bonus Friday stream, yeah. Hey, Smokey Cash, what's going on? Thank you for that follow. We'll get back to our story in just a minute. But yeah, I don't normally read on Friday and Saturdays, but here we are. It's one of those weeks. So yeah, we're just doing a couple of bonus streams there. We'll have our usual gaming stuff, Friday gaming stuff, coming up at 4 p.m. Pacific. Going to be kicking off with Gears. So that's going to be fun. But yeah, in the meantime, yeah, we're just going to be reading for about another, hour and a half, something like that. Just short stories today. We'll continue with Jeeves and Wooster on Monday. Sunday, of course, we have Short Story Sunday. Okay. In the meantime, let's continue. And I hope your day is going well there, Mr. Quinn. Yeah. Okay. Back to our story. Here we go. You loving it? Yeah. You loving the weekend or you loving the story? Or all of the above? I don't know. 2 hours later, the big Martin bomber, which had carried the doctor to Chicago, roared away into the night, and Bird turned back, re-entered the taxi, and headed for the city alone. When Carnes received the telephone call, which was one of those the doctor made from the booth in his club, he hurried over to the First National Bank. His badge secured him an entrance, and he found Casey, the photographer, busily engaged in rigging up an elaborate piece of apparatus on one of the balconies where guards were normally stationed during banking hours. Dr. Bird said to tell you to keep on the job all night if necessary, he told Casey. He thinks he'll need your machine tomorrow. I'll have it ready to turn on the power at 4 a.m., replied Casey. Carnes watched him curiously for a while as he soldered together the electrical connections and assembled an apparatus which looked like a motion picture projector. What are you setting up? He asked at length. It's a high-speed motion picture camera, replied Casey. With a telescopic lens. It's a piece of apparatus which Dr. Bird designed while he was in Washington last week, and which I made from his sketches, using some apparatus we had on hand. It's a dandy, all right. What is special about it? The speed. You know how fast an ordinary movie is taken, don't you? No. Oh, well, it's 16 exposures per second. The slow pictures are taken sometimes at 128 or 256 exposures per second, and then shown at 16. This affair will take 500,000 pictures per second. Well, I didn't know that a film would register with that short an exposure. You know, I am quite amazed. There's a couple of things here. First of all, I am amazed at how many British people are living in Chicago at this time. The other thing I'm amazed at is, well, yeah, it's yeah, they're talking about yeah, how fast an ordinary movie is pictured. They're saying 16 exposures per second. Yeah, that was back in the silent days, back in the days of silent movies. There was actually no standard for silent movies, but it was between 14 to 18 frames per second is what things would be shot at, and that because that is it was like basically that was like the minimum speed at which you can get like a sense of fluid motion, like tricking the eyeball into seeing that series of pictures looking like it's actually moving smoothly. It's around about 14 to 18, and a lot of movies were shot at different rates, and like sometimes you'd have like hand cranked projector speeds going on for playback, which is why a lot of the times a lot of the silent movies look like they're moving like faster than normal, because like the crank speed's not right, not matching the speed at which the film was shot. This is just like total aside stuff right here. Anyway, so but that was only for silent movies. Because when the talkies came out, they had to have the optical stripe on the film strip as well, and that just because of the way sound recording worked at the time, because the audio had to sync up with the movement rate. Then that's when they had to start locking in camera frame rates. So but because film is expensive and everyone tries to cut corners, the decision was made to make a standard of like 24 frames per second, or like 23.976. Whatever, but that was literally only because that was the minimum amount of film needed to accurately sync the audio up to the projected film frames, and so for like almost 80 odd years, 24 frames a second was that's how that was determined. But yeah, if they're talking about anything between 14 to 16, that's silent movie. Anyway, there we go. That is stuff you did not need to know either. Yet here we are. Here we are. Again. I didn't know a film would register with that shortened exposure. Ah, that's slow, replied Casey with a laugh. It all depends on the light. The best flashlight powder gives a flash about 1/10,000th of a second in duration, but that is by no means the speed limit of the film. The only trouble is enough light and sufficient shutter speed. Pictures have been taken by means of spark photography with an exposure of less than 1/3 millionth of a second. The whole secret of this machine lies in the shutter. This big disc with the slots in the edge is set up before the lens and runs at such a speed that 500,000 slots per second pass before the lens. The film, which is 16mm X-ray film, travels behind the lens at a speed of nearly 5 miles per second. Has to be gradually worked up to this speed, and after the whole thing is set up, it takes nearly 4 hours to get to full speed. Well, at that speed, it must take 1,000,000 miles of film before you get up steam. It would if the film were being exposed. There's only about 100 yards of film all told, which will run over these huge drums in an endless belt. There's a regular camera shutter working on an electric principle which remains closed. When the switch is tripped, the shutter opens in about 2/30,000th of a second, stays open just 1/100th of a second, then closes. This time is enough to expose nearly all of our film. When we have our picture, I shut the current down, start applying a magnetic brake, and let it slow down. Takes over an hour to stop it without breaking the film. It sounds complicated, but it works all right. Where's your switch? That's the trick part of it. It's a remote control affair. The shutter opens and starts the machine taking pictures when the back door of the paying teller's cage is opened 1/2 inch. There's also a hand switch in line that can be opened so that you can open the door without setting off the camera if you wish. When the hand switch is closed and the door opened, this is what happens. The shutter on the camera opens, the machine takes 5,000 pictures during the next 100th of a second, and then the shutter closes. Those 5,000 exposures will take about 5 minutes to show at the usual rate of 16 per second. You said that you have to get plenty of light. How are you managing that? The camera is equipped with a special lens ground out of rock crystal. This lens lets in ultraviolet light, which the ordinary lens shuts out, and X-ray film is especially sensitive to ultraviolet light. In order to be sure that we get enough illumination, I'll set up these 2 ultraviolet floodlights to illumine the cage. The teller will have to wear lenses to protect his eyes, and he'll get well sunburned, but something had to be sacrificed to science, as Dr. Bird is always telling me. It's too deep for me, said Carnes with a sigh. Can I do anything to help? The doctor told me to stand by and do anything I could. I might be able to use you a little if you can use tools, said Casey with a grin. You can start bolting together that light-proof shield if you want to. What was that, we read that, the Monsters of Moyen. Monsters of Moyen. Yeah, that was another one there that they had like all that skullduggery going on with ultraviolet light and crystal lenses to do like all kinds of sneaky things. Yeah. Oh, who's winning the battle royale? I don't know. Don't know. Well, Carnes, did you have an instructive night? Asked Dr. Bird cheerfully as he entered the First National Bank at 8:30 the next morning. I win again. I don't see that I did much good, Doctor. Casey would have had the machine ready on time anyway, and I'm no machinist. Well, frankly, Carnes, I didn't expect you to be much help to him, but I did want you to see what Casey was doing, and a little of it was pretty heavy for him to handle alone. I suppose that everything is ready. Good morning, Halo Collector. Of course the Carrington wins, because I'm the king. I am the king. The motor reached full speed about 15 minutes ago, and Casey went out to get a cup of coffee. Would you mind telling me the object of the whole thing? Not at all. I plan to make a permanent record of the work of the most ingenious bank robber in the world. I hope he keeps his word. What do you mean? 3 days ago, when Sturtevant sweated a confession out of poor Winston, the bank got a message that the robbery would be repeated this morning, and dared them to prevent it. Rogers thought it was a hoax, but he telephoned me, and I worked the bureau men night and day to get my camera ready in time for him. I'm afraid that I can't do much to prevent the robbery, but I may be able to take a picture of it, and thus prevent other cases of a like nature. Was the warning written? No, it was telephoned from a pay station in the Loop district, and by the time it was traced and men got there, the telephoner was probably a mile away. He said that he would rob the same cage in the same manner as he did before. Aren't you taking any special precautions? Oh, yes. The bank is putting on extra guards and making a lot of fuss of that sort, probably to the great amusement of the robber. Why not close the cage for the day? Then he would rob a different one, and we would have no way of photographing his actions. To be sure, we will put dummy money there, bundles with bills on the outside and paper on the inside, so if I don't get a picture of him, he won't get much. Every bill in the cage will be marked as well. Did he say what time he would operate? No, he didn't. So we'll have to stand by all day. Oh, hello, Casey. Is everything all right? As sweet as chocolate candy, Doctor. I've tested it out thoroughly, and unless we have to run it so long that the film wears out and breaks, we're sitting pretty. If we don't get the pictures you're looking for, I'm a dodo, and I haven't been called that yet. Good work, Casey. Keep the bearings oiled and pray the film doesn't break. Yeah. How's the Halo Collector today? What's the good word? What's the good word? Any more exciting stuff come out of the GDC? The bank had been opened only 10 minutes when the clangor of gongs announced a robbery. It was practically a duplicate of the first. The paying teller had turned from his window to take some bills from his rack and had found several dozens of bundles missing. As the gong sounded, Dr. Bird and Casey leaped to the camera. She snapped, Doctor, cried Casey as he threw 2 switches. It'll take an hour to stop and half a day to develop the film, but I ought to be able to show you what we got by tonight. Oh, Good enough, cried Dr. Bird. Go ahead while I try to calm down the bank officials. Will you have everything ready by 8 o'clock? Oh, easy, Doctor, replied Casey as he turned to the magnetic brake. By 8 o'clock, quite a crowd had assembled in a private room at the Blackstone Hotel. Besides Dr. Bird and Carnes, Rogers and several other officials of the First National Bank were present, together with Detective Captain Sturtevant and a group of the most prominent scientists and physicians gathered from the schools of the city. Just watching the world burn? Yeah. Gentlemen, said Dr. Bird, when all had taken seats facing a miniature moving picture screen on one wall. Tonight I expect to show you some pictures which will, I am sure, astonish you. It marks the advent of a new departure in transcendental medicine. I'll be glad to answer any questions you may wish to ask and to explain the pictures after they are shown. But before we start a discussion, I will ask that you examine what I have to show you. Lights out, please. He stepped to the rear of the room as the lights went out. As his eyes grew used to the dimness of the room, he moved forward and took a vacant seat. His hand fumbled in his pocket for a second. "Now!" he cried suddenly. In the momentary silence which followed his cry, 2 dull metallic clicks could be heard, and a quick cry that was suddenly strangled as Dr. Bird clamped his hand over the mouth of the man who sat between him and Carnes. "All right, Casey," called the doctor. The whir of a projection machine could be heard, and on the screen before them leaped a picture of the paying teller's cage of the First National Bank. Winston's successor was standing motionless at the wicket, his lips parted in a smile, but the attention of all was riveted on a figure who moved at the back of the cage. As the picture started, the figure was bent over an opened suitcase, stuffing into it bundles of bills. He straightened up and reached to the rack for more bills, and as he did so, he faced the camera full for a moment. He picked up other bundles of bills, filled the suitcase, fastened it in a leisurely manner, opened the rear door of the cage, and walked out. Again, please," called Dr. Bird, "and stop when he faces us full." The picture was repeated and stopped at the point indicated. "Lights, please," cried the doctor. The lights flashed on, and Dr. Bird rose to his feet, pulling up after him the wilted figure of a middle-aged man. "Gentlemen," said the doctor in ringing tones, "allow me to present to you Professor James Kirkwood of the faculty of the Richton University, formerly known as James Collier of the Bureau of Standards, and robber of the First National Bank." Detective Captain Sturtevant jumped to his feet and cast a searching glance at the captive. "He's the man, all right," he cried. "Hang on to him until I get a wagon here." "Oh, shut up," said Carnes. "He's under federal arrest just now, charged with the possession of narcotics. When we're through with him, you can have him if you want him." "How did you get that picture, Doctor?" cried the cashier. "I watched that cage every minute during the morning, and I'll swear that man never entered and stole that money as the picture shows, unless he managed to make himself invisible." "You're closer to the truth than you suspect, Mr. Rogers," said Dr. Bird. "It's not quite a matter of invisibility, but something pretty close to it. It's a matter of catalysts. Sup there, Vooter? Good morning." What kind of cats?" asked the cashier. "Not cats, Mr. Rogers. Catalysts. Catalysts is the name of a chemical reaction consisting essentially of a decomposition and a new combination effected by means of a catalyst which acts on the compound bodies in question, but which goes through the reaction itself unchanged. There are a great many of them, which are used in the arts and in manufacturing, and while their action is not always clearly understood, the results are well known and can be banked on. One of the commonest instances of the use of a catalyst is the use of sponge platinum in the manufacture of sulfuric acid. I will not burden you with the details of the contact process as it is known, but the combination is effected by means of finely divided platinum, which is neither changed, consumed, or wasted during the process. While there are a number of other catalysts known, for instance iron, in reactions in which metallic magnesium is concerned, the commonest are the metals of the platinum group. Less is known of the action of catalysts in the organic reactions, but it has been the subject of intensive study by Dr. Knowles of the Bureau of Standards for several years. His studies of the effects of different colored lights, that is, rays of different wavelengths, on the reactions which constitute growth in plants, have had a great effect on hothouse forcing of plants and promise to revolutionize the truck gardening industry. He has speeded up the rate of growth to as high as 10 times the normal rate in some cases. A few years ago, he and his assistant, James Collier, turned their attention toward discovering a catalyst which would do for the metabolic reactions in animal life what his rays did for plants. What his method was I will not disclose for obvious reasons, but suffice it to say that he met with great success. He took a puppy and, by treating it with his catalytic drugs, made it grow to maturity, pass through its entire normal lifespan, and die of old age in 6 months. And that's very interesting, Doctor, but I fail to see what bearing it has on the robbery. Oh, Mr. Rogers, how on a dark day and in the absence... Mr. Rogers, how on a dark day and in the absence of timepiece would you judge the passage of time? Why, by my stomach, I guess. Exactly. By your metabolic rate. You eat a meal, it digests, you expend the energy which you have taken into your system, your stomach becomes empty, and your system demands more energy. You are hungry, and you judge that some 5 or 6 hours must have passed since you last ate. Certainly. Let us suppose that by some means of some tonic, some catalytic drug, your rate of metabolism and also your rate of expenditure of energy has been increased 6-fold. You would eat a meal, and in 1 hour you would be hungry again. Having no timepiece, and assuming you were in a light-proof room, you would judge that some 5 hours had passed, would you not?
I expect so.
Very well. Now suppose that this accelerated rate of digestion and expenditure of energy continued. You would be sleepy in perhaps 3 hours, would sleep about 1 hour and a quarter, and would then wake, ready for your breakfast. In other words, you would have lived through a day in 4 hours.
What advantage would there be in that?
None from your standpoint. It would, however, increase the rate of reproduction of cattle greatly, and might be a great boom to agriculture. But we will not discuss this phase now. Suppose it were possible to increase your rate of metabolism and expenditure of energy. In other words, your rate of living. Not 6 times, but 30,000 times. In such a case, you would live 5 minutes in 1/100th of a second. Naturally, and you would live a year in about 17½ minutes, and a normal lifespan of 70 years in about 20 hours. You would be as badly off as any common mayfly.
Oh, no, sorry, that was the skeptic. Well, naturally, and you'd live a year in about 17½ minutes, and a normal life of 70 years in about 20 hours. You'd be as badly off as any common mayfly. Oh boy, all that coffee's all cold.
Agreed. But suppose that you could so regulate the dose of your catalyst that its effect would last for only 1/100th of a second. During that short period of time, you'd be able to do the work that would ordinarily take you 5 minutes. In other words, you could enter a bank, pack a satchel with currency, and walk out. You would be working in a leisurely manner, yet your actions would have been so quick that no human eye could have detected them. This is my theory of what actually took place. For verification, I turn to Dr. Kirkwood, as he prefers to be known now.
I don't know how you got that picture, but what you've said about it is right, replied the prisoner.
I got that picture by using a speed of 30,000 times the normal 16 exposures per second. replied Dr. Bird. "That figure I got from Dr. Knowles, the man who perfected the secret you stole when you left the Bureau 3 years ago. You secured only part of it, and I suppose it took all your time since to perfect and complete it. You gave yourself away when you experimented on young lad. I was a track man myself in my college days, and when I saw an account of his running I smelt a rat, so I came back and watched him. As soon as I saw him crush and swallow a capsule, just as the gun was fired, I was sure and got hold of him. He was pretty stubborn, but he finally told me what name you were running under now, and the rest was easy. I would have got you in time anyway, but your bravado in telling us when you would next operate gave me the idea of letting you do it, and photographing you at work. That's all I have to say. Captain Sturtevant, you can take your prisoner whenever you want him."
"I reckoned without you, Dr. Bird, but the end hasn't come yet. Oh, no, this is the prisoner. I reckoned without you, Dr. Bird, but the end hasn't come yet. You may send me up for a few years, but you'll never find that money. I'm sure of that." Is this from Google Books? No, it's not. This is from is a public domain sci-fi magazine, Astounding Stories of Super Science. You can get free digital downloads from Gutenberg.org. Yeah, they're all in the public domain.
"Tut-tut, Professor," laughed Carnes. "Your safety deposit box in the Commercial National is already sealed until a court orders it opened. The bills you took this morning were all marked, so that is merely additional proof, if we needed it. You surely didn't think that such a transparent device as changing your name from James Collier to John Collier and signing with your left hand instead of your right would fool the Secret Service, did you? Remember, your old bureau records show you to be ambidextrous." What about Winston's confession?" asked Rogers suddenly.
"Detective Captain Sturtevant can explain that to a court when Mr. Winston brings suit against him for false arrest and brutal treatment," replied Carnes.
"A very interesting case, Carnes," remarked the doctor a few hours later. "It was an enjoyable interlude in the routine of most of the cases on which you consult me. But our playtime is over. We'll have to get going after that. Well, we'll have to get after that counterfeiting case tomorrow."
Oh, and that's the end. That was very, very abrupt ending. All right, there we go. Let's get back to the cover, just in case you're wondering. Mr. Quinn, what happened was, during copyright has changed a lot over the years. And the rules for it, and at certain periods in the past where copyright used to be much shorter, you could manually when it was 14 years, that's all you had for a copyright. After 14 years, you could get a one-time extension of an additional 14 years, but you had to go to the Copyright Office and get all your forms signed, put in, and did a whole bunch of paperwork. And then later on, it was like 28 years with a one-time extension of 28 years. Anyway, there were tons of science fiction and fantasy and just all kinds of like short story magazines put out during this period, either with really sloppy record keeping, or they just went out of business, and just so much of this stuff was never re-copyrighted when they had the chance to do it, and so it just like fell into the public domain. So yeah, you can go to places like Gutenberg.org and or like Archive.org and find a ton of magazines like these with all kinds of cool stories. And the great part is too, there's you can often find stories by like sci-fi, like classic, like well-known sci-fi authors in here as well, because it's just weird copyright stuff. So if you say if you have a book published by I'm trying to think of a well-known name. I don't want to use an example just in case I'm using a wrong example, but tons. We'll say Okay, I don't want to use any names. But they might have published stuff in a book and published it in a magazine. And so oftentimes the actual book itself will still be under copyright because the book publisher is still around or did all the proper stuff, while if it was also published in a magazine, it will have fallen, the magazine version will be in the public domain. And so you have this weird thing where you can read it from a magazine and it be in the public domain, but if you had it in book form, it's like, no, you can't do that. It's just weird, Hey, happy birthday, yeah, up until 2 years ago when they actually lost it in a lawsuit. Yeah, they finally got thrown into the public domain, yeah. 20 cents is about $2.85 in today's money. Nice. Alrighty. Okay, thank you, Shadowtronics. Alright. Yeah, no, I just checked Discord. Alright, let's, okay, I just need to check, yeah, so that was an okay story. That was an okay one. We've got time for more. Yeah, we'll read another one in just a minute. Just wanted to give a little shout out to my friends over on Twitch and YouTube. Let's see. Well, I don't think anyone's watching on them. But anyway, if you are, yeah, for the next couple of weeks, my book clubs, I'm going to be streaming them over to Twitch and YouTube, just to, yeah, because, yeah, I think right about now, everyone, well, there's so many people at home right now, through no fault of their own, needing just something a little different to help them get through the day, take their mind off of things, working from home or school's out or what have you. So, But yeah, in case you're watching there, our main stream is over on Mixer. That's where all the chit-chat and stuff happens. And you're more than welcome to join us there. But yeah, if you're over there as well, that is cool. Sup, Dragon's Lair? How you doing? This fine day. There we go. And there we go. If anyone needs a link to that tweet to pop into their own or to throw into Facebook or what have you there, that would be kind of nice too. We're doing okay. Doing okay. Normally I don't. Oh Jesus! All right. That was wow. Okay. Ooh, there we go.
For the TP Fund, Friday Book Club needs to be a thing.
Oh wow, where'd that echo come from? That was, yeah, all right. That was good, very good. Oh boy, going into the TP thing, it's so hard to do like a regular Friday show though, Shadowtronics. Thank you for those for that TP fund there. But the but yeah, no, it's 10 hours a week, 40 hours a month. That's a lot already, and I by the time Thursday rolls around, I can really feel it in my voice, and which is why I like taking Fridays and Saturdays off. We'll see what happens, though. We'll see what happens. But anyway, thank you for that very cool little donos going straight into the TP fund. Yeah. Boy, oh boy. Let's see, where are we at? Yeah, so but yeah, it's kind of important right now, because it's because I think we all know why. But yeah, okay, let's what are we doing? Wow, it's I thought there might have been more people on this morning, but I know maybe everyone is doing some last minute stocking up on stuff. It's a possibility. We shall see. Boy, oh boy. Okay. Well, where are we at? Let's take another look inside here. We'll find a different story. I got another couple of these all lined up. The Beetle Horde is a big long story. What's Mad Music? In an inner room, they found a diabolical machine. Anthony Palsha, he's a pretty good sci-fi writer. Mad Music. You've been listening to Escape with being in the it keeps getting closer. Yeah. Escape. X minus 1 is yeah, I like that one a lot too.
New York is getting shelter in place. Oh, yeah, I bet they are. I tell you what, this would have been nice 6 weeks ago. Oh boy, oh man. Yeah, it's just a shame that all the states have to do it all higgledy-piggledy right now. In some states, they're even just like leaving it up to counties or even like individual cities, which doesn't help anything. Uh-huh. Yeah, you live in New York there, Dragon's Lair? Bum 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 bum. Oh boy, oh boy. You're a bit farther north. Okay, yeah, yeah. I used to live in upstate New York. I love New York State. I love New York State. If I had any state in which I could be living in, it would be New York State. New York State. I love it. New York State. Let's see. I just checking for notifications here real fast. One second. It looks like nothing important. Suits me fine. You're in Maine. All right. Yeah. Well, what's Maine's situation right now? Last I read, you had New York, Connecticut. Oh, I forgot what the 4 states were. The 2 other states that were trying to coordinate on something. Shadowtronics has been lucky due to being off the beaten path, but they confirmed 3 counties around. Yeah. I tell you what, Shadowtronics. It didn't just arrive. It's just, yeah, I don't know. People are starting to get tested. Alrighty. Whoo. Oh. Yeah, we did. Okay, that's in the UK. Alright, just taking a quick look. Illinois is finally doing something. Man. Alright. It's not that bad. Paper products are pretty much gone like everywhere else. There's some curfews, non-essentials are closed, but otherwise not so bad. Shadowtronics has got family, dogs, and book club, and he's good. Yeah. That's pretty much all we need. I think we got it. Paper products are good. Oh yeah, I read about an 18-wheeler. There was an 18-wheeler with like 18,000 pounds of toilet paper, stolen toilet paper in the back of it. That was all that stuff's happening there right now. All that stuff's happening in where Shadowtronics lives right now. Yeah, that was man. That was kind of amusing. And there's some senators got some splaining to do. They got some splaining to do. Yeah, they do. Yeah, there's gonna be some heads on pikes, I hope. Smokey in the toilet, man. That one's good. I like that one. Toilet paper forte. Well, yeah, it's, I don't know, that DP. Whoa, there we go. Hey, Big Baloney Tony, how you doing, man? How are you doing? We just, yeah, we got a bit of a bonus stream today. Bit of a bonus one. Man, oh man. Hope you are doing good. We're gonna be we're gonna read another short story here. I don't even know what this one's about. This is Mad Music. This is from by the way, this is from February 1930. By the way, February 1930. Astounding stories of super science. Science. It's good stuff. It's good stuff. But yeah, you know, it just helps us get through the day. Passes a little time. You are working and responding to these calls. Ah. Oh, which calls are that? To the toilet paper thieves. Someone broke into my outhouse. They stole a roll of TP. Yeah.
I need to brush up on my Foley skills. Yeah, that would. Yeah, that's I've that's actually a little project which I've put on the side burner for right now. It is actually it was doing an actual OTR session with it'd be digital Foley, but yeah. I've actually done Foley before, by the way. It's a lot of fun. I worked on one. Actually, I've worked on. Oh no, I've just one. Doing that kind of Foley. Yeah, just one. I've done a couple of ADR stuff. Just people being silly at the grocery stores. Okay. Yeah. I'm sure there are a lot of shenanigans going on right now. I'm sure there's a few panicky people, but yeah. Alrighty, let's get into our next story. We can do that. Let's do that. Alrighty. What do we got? This one is what is this called? This is Mad Music. Mad Music. I have no idea what it's about. In an inner room, they found a diabolical machine. To the accompaniment of a crashing roar, not unlike rumbling thunder, the proud Colossus building, which a few minutes before had reared its 60 stories of artistic architecture towards the blue dome of the sky, crashed in a rugged, dusty heap of stone, brick, cement, and mortar. The steel framework, like the skeleton of some prehistoric monster, still reared to dizzy heights, but in a bent and twisted shape of grotesque outline. No one knew how many lives were snuffed out in the avalanche. As the collapse occurred in the early dawn, it was not believed the death list would be large. It was admitted, however, that autos, cabs, and surface cars may have been caught under the falling rock. One train was known to have been wrecked in the subway due to a cave-in from the surface under the ragged mountain of debris. The litter fairly filled the part of Times Square, the most congested crossroads on God's footstool. Straggling brick and rock had rolled across the street to the west and had crashed into windows and doors of innocent small tradesmen's shops. All right, I had not expected disaster on our upbeat story thing, but here we are. A few minutes after the crash, a mad crowd of people had piled from subway exits as far away as Penn Station and Columbus Circle, and from cross streets. These milled about, gesticulating and shouting hysterically. All neighboring police stations were hard put to handle the growing mob. Hundreds of dead and maimed were being carried to the surface from the wrecked train and the subway. Trucks and cabs joined the ambulance crews in the work of transporting these to morgues and hospitals. As the morning grew older and news of the disaster spread, more milling thousands tried to crowd into the square. Many were craning necks, hopelessly on the outskirts of the throng, blocks away, trying to vainly get a view of what lay beyond. The fire department and finally several companies of militia joined the police in handling the crowd. Newsies, never asleep, yowled their "Waxtras" and made much small money. The newspapers devoted solid pages in attempting to describe what had happened. Nervously, efficient reporters had written and written, using all their best adjectives and inventing new ones in attempts to picture the crash and the hysterics which followed. When the excitement was at its height, a middle-aged man, bleeding at the head, clothes torn and dusty, staggered into the West 47th Street police station. He found a lone sergeant at the desk. The police sergeant jumped to his feet as the bedraggled man entered and stumbled to a bench. "I'm Pat Brennan, street floor watchman of the Colossus," he said. "I ran for it. I got caught in the edge of the wreck, and a brick clipped me. I must have been out for some time. When I came around, I looked back just once at the wreck, and then I beat it over here. Phone my boss." "I'll let you phone your boss," said the sergeant. "But first tell me just what happened." "Earthquake, I guess. I saw the floor heaving in waves. Glass was crashing and falling into the street. All windows in the arcade buckled, either in or out. I ran into the street and looked up. God, what a sight!
The building from sidewalk to towers was rocking and waving and twisting and buckling, and I saw it was bound to crumple, so I lit out and ran. I heard a roar like all hell broke loose, and then something nicked me and my light went out. How many got caught in the building? Nobody got out but me, I guess. There weren't many tenants. The building is all rented, but not everybody had moved in yet, and those as had didn't spend their nights there. There was a watchman for every 5 stories, an engineer and his crew. 3 elevator operators had come in. There was no names of tenants in or out of my book after 4 a.m. The crash must have come about 6. That's all. Throughout the country, the news of the crash was received with great interest and wonderment, but in one small circle it caused absolute consternation. That was in the offices of the Muller Construction Company, the builders of the Colossus. Jason V. Linnane, chief engineer of the company, was in conference with its president, James J. Muller. Muller sat with his head in his hands, and his face wore an expression of a man in absolute anguish. Linnane was pacing the floor, a wild expression in his eyes, and at times he muttered and mumbled under his breath. "Hey, Metal Guru, what's going on, my man?" In the other offices, the entire force from manager to office boys was hushed and awed, for they had seen the expression on the faces of the heads of the concern when they had stalked into the inner office that morning. Muller finally looked up, rather hopelessly, at Linnane. "Unless we can prove that the crash was due to some circumstance over which we had no control, we're ruined," he said. And there actually were tears in his eyes. "No doubt about that," agreed Linnane. "But I can swear that the Colossus went up according to specifications, and that every ounce and splinter of material was of the best. The workmanship was faultless. We have built scores of the biggest blocks in the world, and most of them, all this Colossus, was the most perfect. I had prided myself on it. Muller, it was perfection. I simply cannot account for it. I cannot. It should have stood up for thousands of years. The foundation was solid rock. It positively was not an earthquake. No other building in the section was even jarred. No other earthquake was ever localized to 1/2 block of the Earth's crust, and we can positively eliminate an earthquake or an explosion as the possible cause. I'm sure we are not to blame, but we'll have to find the exact cause." "If there was some flaw," questioned Muller, although he knew the answer. "Good morning, A.J. I'm going to get that. A.Jilu Comics. Is it A.J. Ilu or A.Jilu? I'm not quite sure, but A.J. Just A.J. All right, that's fine. Good morning. "If there was some flaw, then we're sunk. The newspapers are already clamoring for probes, of us, of the building, of the owners, and everybody, and anything. We've got to have something damned plausible when we go to bat on this proposition, or every dollar we have in the world will have to be paid out." "That's not all," said Muller. "Not only will we be penniless, but we may have to go to jail, and we'll never be able to show our faces in reputable business circles again. Who was the last to go over that building?" "I sent Teddy Jenks. He is a cub and swell-headed and too big for his pants, but I would bank my life on his judgment. He has the judgment of a much older man, and I would also bank my life and reputation on his engineering skill and knowledge. He pronounced the building positively okay. 100%. "Where is Jenks?" "Well, he'll be here as soon as his car can drive down from Tarryton. He should be here now. A.J. Ilu Comics." All right, there we go. Very good. I will try to remember that. A.J. Ilu Comics. Very good, very good. What's Metal Guru up to today, by the way? Aside from just chilling and tuning in. As they talked, Jenks, the youngest member of the engineering force, entered. He entered like a whirlwind. He threw his hat on the floor and drew out a drawer of a cabinet. He pulled out the plans for the Colossus, big blueprints, some of them yards in extent, and threw them on the floor. Then he dropped to his knees and began poring over them. This is a hell of a time for you to begin getting around, exploded Muller. What were you doing, cabareting all night? Sure is terrible. Awful, said Jenks half to himself. Answer me, thundered Muller. Oh, yes, said Jenks, looking up. He saw the look of anguish on his boss's face and forgot his own excitement and sympathy. He jumped to his feet, placed his arm about the shoulders of the older man, and led him to a chair. Linnane only scowled at the young man. I was delayed because I stopped by to see the wreck. My God, Mr. Muller, it's awful. Jenks drew his hand across his eye as if to erase the scene of the wrecked building. Then, patting the older man affectionately on the back, he said, Good morning, Mr. Dentures. Well, that's not what he said, but I'm saying that too. Good morning, Mr. Dentures. Then, patting the older man affectionately on the back, he said, Buck up, I'm on the job, as usual. I'll find out about it. It could not have been our fault. Why, man, that building was as strong as Gibraltar itself. You were the last to inspect it, accused Miller with a break in his voice. Nobody knows that better than I, and I can swear by all that's square and honest that it was no fault of the material or the construction. It must have been... Must have been what? I'll be damned if I know. That's like him, said Linnane, who, while really kindly intentioned, had always rather enjoyed prodding the young engineer. Like me, like the devil, shouted Jenks, glaring at Linnane. I suppose you know all about it, you're so blamed wise. No, I don't know, admitted Linnane, but I do know that you don't like me to tell you anything. Nevertheless, I'm going to tell you that you'd better get busy and find out what caused it, or... That's just what I'm doing, said Jenks, and he dived for his plans on the floor. Newspaper reporters, many of them, were fighting outside to get in. Muller looked at Linnane when a stenographer had announced the reporters for the 10th time. We'd better let them in, he said. It looks bad to crawl for cover. Oh, no, that's the wrong one. That's Muller. We'd better let them in, he said. It looks bad to crawl for cover. What are you going to tell him? Asked Linnane. God only knows, said Muller. Let me handle them, said Jenks, looking up confidently. The newspapermen had rushed the office. They came in like a wild wave. Questions flew like feathers at a cockfight. Muller held up his hand, and there was something in his grief-stricken eyes that held the gentlemen of the press in silence. They had time to look around. They saw the handsome, dark-haired, brown-eyed Jenks poring over the plans. Oh, Jesus. What is that? Ah! Oh, there's no message to go with that. No message to go with that, but thank you very much. That's very kind of you. Wow. I'll tell you what, that's going straight into my TP fund. That's exactly where that's going. Thank you. That was... Oh, that was that AJ? Was that AJ? I wasn't quite sure. I didn't recognize the name that I put up. It wasn't you. Okay, all right. Okay, I did not. Yeah. Well, thank you, Megan. That's very kind. I don't know who Megan is off the top of my head. I generally don't know people's names, but thank you very much, Megan. It is greatly appreciated. The Devil Shot Caller. Hey, what's going on, Devil Shot Caller? Yeah, but Megan, you are truly generous. Thank you. Thank you. Well, and yeah, as soon as we hit the top of that goal, I'll be able to get that roll of TP off of eBay. I got it saved. I got it favorited. Oh boy, oh boy. Anyway, okay, yeah. So yeah. What's the Devil Shot Caller up to this morning? How are you doing? Yeah.
We're doing a little bonus stream today, by the way. Yeah, I generally don't do Friday and Saturday, but yeah, it's a special week this week, a very special week. How is everyone doing on this fine evening? The Devil Shock Caller's asking. I'm doing well. It's still morning here. Well, actually, 15 minutes to noon. So I guess you're on the Europe side somewhere. Yeah. Here in California, we just got the lots of people working from home, school's out, and yeah, I just figured we'd do like a bonus book club today just to yeah, help people while away the day. What are you up to? And Ms. Megan, thank you once again for that very yeah, for that donor. That's very kind, very kind. All right. Okay, so the press are rushing in. The newspapermen had rushed the office. They came in like a wild wave. Questions flew like feathers at a cockfight. Oh, you got some coffee in your drawings. Drawing some. Nice. Very nice. Muller held up his hand, and there was something in his grief-stricken eyes that held the gentlemen of the press in silence. They had time to look around. They saw the handsome, dark-haired, brown-eyed Jenks poring over the plans. Dust from the carpet smudged his knees, and he had rubbed some of it over a sweating forehead, but he still looked the picture of self-confident efficiency. Gentlemen, said Muller slowly, I can answer all your questions at once. Our firm is one of the oldest and staunchest in the trade. Our buildings stand as monuments to our integrity. All but one, said a young Irishman. You are right, all but one. Devil Shot Caller's playing FIFA 20. FIFA, Electronic Arts. Is it good? Just trying to relax? Nice. The last FIFA game I played was I think it was just called FIFA, actually, back on the Panasonic 3DO back in like 1995. Yikes. You are right, all but one, confessed Muller. But that one, believe me, has been visited by an act of God. Some form of earthquake or some unlooked-for, uncontrolled, almost unbelievable catastrophe has happened. The Muller Company stands back of its work to the last dollar. Gentlemen, you know as much as we do. Mr. Jenks there, whose reputation as an engineer is quite sturdy, I assure you, was the last to inspect the building. He passed upon it when it was finished. He's here at your service. Jenks arose, brushed some dust from his knees. You look like you've been praying, bandied the Irishman. Maybe I have. Now let me talk. Don't broadside me with questions. I know what you want to know. Let me talk. The newspapermen were silent. There has been talk of probing this disaster naturally, began Jenks. You all know, gentlemen, that we will aid any inquiry to our utmost. You want to know what we have to say about it, who's responsible. In a reasonable time I will have a statement to make that will be startling in the extreme. I'm not sure of my ground now. About the ground under the Colossus, said the Irishman. Don't let's kid each other, pleaded Jenks. Look at Mr. Muller. It is as if he had lost his whole family. We are good people. I'm doing all I can. Mr. Lenane, who had charge of the construction, is doing all he can. We believe we are blameless. If it is proven otherwise, we will acknowledge our fault, assume financial responsibility, and take our medicine. Believe me, that building was perfection plus, like all our buildings. That covers the entire situation. Hundreds of questions were parried and answered by the three engineers, and the reporters left convinced that if the Muller Construction Company was responsible, it was not through any fault of its own. What? Look at all these old people here in chat. Look at them. Look at them. Wow. Wow. They got a few years on me, I think. Playing back in 2011. Back in 1992. Oh, you still play Sega emulated? Hey, Stunted Blunt. Good morning, good morning.
Yeah, those retro consoles there. Yeah, I wish I had a few spare bucks to pick a couple of those up there. I wouldn't mind getting some of those. They seem pretty fun. All right. Oh, the fact that Jenks and Linnane were not strong for each other, except to recognize each other's ability as engineers, was due to an incident of the past. This incident had caused a ripple of mirth in engineering circles when it happened, and the laugh was on the older man, Linnane. It was when radio was new. Can you tell us about that, AJ? It was when radio was new. Linnane, a structural engineer, had paid little attention to radio. Jenks was the kind of engineer who dabbled in all sciences. He knew his radio. When Jenks first came to work with a technical sheepskin and a few tons of brass, Linnane accorded him only passing notice. Jenks craved the plaudits of the older man and his palship. Linnane treated him as a son, but did not warm to his social advances. "I'm as good an engineer as he is," mused Jenks. "And if he's going to hi-hat me, I'll just put a swift one over on him and compel his notice." The next day, Jenks approached Linnane in conference and said, "I've got a curious bet on, Mr. Linnane. I'm betting sound can travel a mile quicker than it travels a quarter of a mile." "What?" said Linnane. "I'm betting 50 that sound can travel a mile quicker than it can travel a quarter of a mile." "Oh, no, it can't," insisted Linnane. "Oh, yes, it can," decided Jenks. "I'll take some of that fool money myself," said Linnane. "How much?" asked Jenks. "As much as you want." "All right, $500. "How are you going to prove your contention?" "By stopwatches, and your men can hold the watches. We'll bet that a pistol shot can be heard 2 miles away quicker than it can be heard a quarter of a mile away." "Sound travels at about 1/5 of a mile a second. The rate varies slightly according to temperature," explained Linnane. "At the freezing point, the rate is 1,090 feet per second and increases a little over 1 foot for every degree Fahrenheit." "Hot or cold," breezed Jenks, "I'm betting you $500 that sound can travel 2 miles quicker than a quarter of a mile." "You're on, you damned idiot," shouted the completely exasperated Linnane. AJ only recalls when the first VCRs were coming out. RetroPie on Raspberry Pi. Yeah, I've heard a lot about the Raspberry Pi and all of that. Yeah, is there a Raspberry Pi emulator for Windows? You know, there probably is. I'm sure someone's made one. Jenks let Linnane it kind of defeats the whole purpose. Jenks let Linnane's friends hold the watches, and his friend held the money. Jenks was to fire the shot. Jenks fired the shot in front of a microphone on a football field. One of Linnane's friends picked the sound up instantaneously on a 3-tube radio set 2 miles away. The other watchholder was standing in the open a quarter of a mile away, and his watch showed a second and a fraction. All hands agreed that Jenks had won the bet fairly. Linnane never exactly liked Jenks after that. Then Jenks rather aggravated matters by a habit. Whenever Linnane would make a very positive statement, Jenks would look owl-eyed and say, "Mr. Linnane, I'll have to sound you out about that." The heavy accent on the word sound nettled Linnane somewhat. Linnane never completely forgave Jenks for putting over this fast one. Socially, they were always more or less at loggerheads, but neither let this feeling interfere with their work. They worked together faithfully enough, and each recognized the ability of the other. And so it was that Linnane and Jenks, their heads together, worked all night in an attempt to find some cause that would tie responsibility for the disaster on Mother Nature. They failed to find it, and sleepy-eyed they were forced to admit failure. So far. The newspapers, to whom Muller had said that he would not shirk any responsibility, began a hue and cry for the arrest of all parties in any way concerned with the direction of the building of the Colossus. When the death list from the crash and subway wreck reached 97, the press waxed nasty and demanded the arrest of Muller, Linnane, and Jenks in no uncertain tones. Half dead from lack of sleep, the three men were taken by the police to the district attorney's offices, and after a strenuous grilling were formally placed under arrest on charges of criminal negligence. They put up a $50,000 bond in each case, and were permitted to go and seek further to find the cause of what the newspapers now began calling the colossal failure. Several days were spent by Linnane and Jenks in examining the wreckage, which was being removed from Times Square, truckload after truckload, to a point outside the city. Here it was again sorted and examined and piled for future disposal. So far as could be found, every brick, stone, and ounce of material used in the building was perfect. Attorneys, however, assured Linnane, Jenks, and Muller that they would have to find the real cause of the disaster if they were to escape possible long prison sentences. Night after night Jenks courted sleep, but it would not come. He began to grow wan and haggard. Jenks took to walking the streets at night, mile after mile, thinking, always thinking, and searching his mind for a solution of the mystery. It was evening. He had walked past the scene of the Colossus crash several times. He found himself on a side street. He looked up and saw in electric lights Town Hall. "Hey, Chris Alberti, how you doing, man?" What day are you on now?" "Munsterbergen, the Mad Musician. Concert here tonight." He took $5 from his pocket and bought a ticket. He entered with the crowd and was ushered to a seat. He looked neither to the right or left. His eyes were sunken, his face lined with worry. Something within Jenks caused him to turn slightly. He was curiously aware of a beautiful girl who sat beside him. She had a mass of golden hair which seemed to defy control. It was wild, positively tempestuous. Her eyes were deep blue, and her skin as white as fleecy clouds in spring. He was dimly conscious that those glorious eyes were troubled. She glanced at him. She was aware that he was suffering. A great surge of sympathy welled in her heart. She could not explain the feeling. A great red plush curtain parted in the center and drew in graceful folds to the edges of the proscenium. A small stage was revealed. A tousle-headed man with glaring, beady black eyes, dressed in black evening clothes, stepped forward and bowed. Under his arm was a violin. He brought the violin forward. His nose, like the beak of some great bird, bobbed up and down in acknowledgment of the plaudits which greeted him. His long, nervous fingers began to caress the instrument, and his lips began to move. Jenks was aware that he was saying something, but was not at all interested. What he said was this. Maybe, yes, I couldn't talk so good English, but you could understand it, yes. And now I tell you that I never play the compositions of any man. I extemporize exclusively. I just play, and maybe you should listen, yes. If I please you, I am just happy." Jenks' attention was drawn to him. He noted his wild appearance. He sure looks mad enough," mused Jenks. The violinist flipped the fiddle up under his chin. He drew the bow over the strings and began a gentle melody that reminded one of raindrops falling on calm waters. Jenks forgot his troubles. He forgot everything. He slumped in his seat and closed his eyes. The rain continued falling from the strings of the violin. Suddenly, the melody changed to a glad little lilting measure, as sweet as love itself. The sun was coming out again, and the birds began to sing. There was the trill of a canary with the sun on its cage. There was the song of the thrush, the mockingbird, and the meadowlark. These blended finally into a melodious burst of chirping melody, which seemed a chorus of the wild birds of the forest and glen. Then the lilting love measure again. It tore at the heartstrings and brought tears to one's eyes. Hey, this stunted blunt, you like the adventure books? All right. Yeah, we're just doing some pulp sci-fi today, though. Unconsciously, the girl next to Jenks leaned towards him. Involuntarily, he leaned to meet her. Their shoulders touched. The cloud of her golden hair came to rest against his dark locks. Their hands found each other with gentle pressure. Both were lost to the world. Abruptly, the music changed. There was a succession of broken treble notes that sounded like the crackling of flames. Moans, deep and melancholy, followed. These grew more strident and prolonged, giving place to abject howls, suggesting the lamentation of the damned. The hands of the boy and girl gripped tensely. They could not help shuddering. The violin began to produce notes of a leering, jeering character, growing more horrible with each measure until they burst in a loud guffaw of maniacal laughter. The whole performance was as if someone had taken a heaven and plunged it into a hell. The musician bowed jerkily and was gone. There was no applause, only wild exclamations. Half the house was on its feet, the other half sat as if glued to chairs. The boy and the girl were standing, their hands gripping tensely. "Come on, let's get out of here," said Jenks. The girl took her wrap, and Jenks helped her into it. Hand in hand, they fled the place. In the lobby, their eyes met, and for the first time they realized they were strangers, yet deep in their hearts was a feeling that their fates had been sealed. "My goodness," burst from the girl. The lamentation of the damned, indeed. Indeed. Sci-fi is just as good, stunted blood, okay? Glad to hear it. "It can't be helped now," said Jenks decisively. "What can't be helped?" asked the girl, although she knew in her heart. "Nothing can be helped," said Jenks. Then he added, "We should know each other by this time. We've been holding hands for an hour." The girl's eyes flared. "You have no right to presume on that situation," she said. Jenks could have kicked himself. Forgive me. It was only that I just wanted to know you. Won't you let me see you home?" "You may," said the girl simply, and she led the way to her own car. They drove north. Their bodies seemed like magnets. They were again shoulder to shoulder, holding hands. "Will you tell me your name?" pleaded Jenks. "Surely," replied the girl. "I am Elaine Linane." "What?" exploded Jenks. "Why, I work with a Linane, an engineer with the Muller Construction Company." "He's my father," she said. We're great friends," said the boy. I'm Jenks, his assistant. At least we work together." "Yes, I've heard of you," said the girl. "It is strange the way we met. My father admires your work, but I'm afraid you're not great friends." The girl had forgotten her troubles. She chuckled. She heard the way Jenks had sounded her father out. Jenks was speechless. The girl continued. I don't know whether to like you or to hate you. My father is an old dear. You were cruel to him. Jenks was abject. I did not mean to be, he said. He rather belittled me without realizing it. I had to make my stand. The difference in our years made him take me rather too lightly. I had to compel his notice if I was to advance. Oh, said the girl. I am sorry. So sorry. You might not have been altogether at fault, said the girl. Father forgets at times that I have grown up. I resent being treated like a child, but he is the soul of goodness and fatherly care. Oh, I know that, said Jenks. Every engineer knows his mathematics. It was this fact, coupled with what the world calls a lucky break, that solved the Colossus mystery. Nobody can get around the fact that 2 and 2 make 4. Jenks had happened on accomplishment to advance in the engineering profession, and it was well for him that he had reached a crisis. He had never believed in luck or in hunches, so it was good for him to be brought face to face with the fact that sometimes the footsteps of man are guided. It made him begin to look into the engineering of the universe, to think more deeply, and to acknowledge a higher power. With Linane he had butted into a stone wall. They were coming to know what real trouble meant. The fact that they were innocent did not make the steel bars of a cage any more attractive. Their troubles began to wrap about them with the clammy intimacy of a shroud. Then came the lucky break. Next to his troubles, Jenks' favorite topic was the mad musician. He tried to learn all he could about this uncanny character at whose concert he had met the girl of his life. He learned 2 facts that made him perk up and think. One was that the mad musician had had offices and a studio in the Colossus, and was one of the first to move in. The other was that the mad musician took great delight in shattering glassware with notes of, or vibrations from, a violin. Nearly everyone knows that a glass tumbler can be shattered by the proper note sounded on a violin. The mad musician took delight in this trick. Jenks courted his acquaintance and saw him shatter a row of glasses of different sizes by sounding different notes on his fiddle. The glasses crashed one after another like gelatin balls hit by the bullets of an expert rifleman. Then Jenks, the engineer who knew his mathematics, put 2 and 2 together. It made 4. Of course. Sit there, Loyal. How you doing? Got a sweet, sweet host from Loyal. Listen, Linane, he said to his co-worker, this fiddler is crazier than a flock of cuckoos. If he can crack crockery with violin sound vibrations, is it not possible, by carrying the vibrations to a much higher power, that he could crack a pile of stone, steel, brick, and cement, like the Colossus? Well, possible, but hardly probable. Still, Linane mused, when you think about it and put 2 and 2 together. Let's go after him and see what he's doing now. Both jumped for their coats and hats. As they fared forth, Jenks cinched his argument. If a madman takes delight in breaking If a madman takes delight in breaking glassware with a vibratory wave or vibration, how much more of a thrill would he get by crashing a mountain? Wild, but unanswerable, said Linane. Jenks had been calling on the mad musician at his country place. He had a studio in the Colossus, he reminded Linane. He must have reopened somewhere else in town. I wonder where. Musicians are great union men, said Linane. Phone the union. There we go. Teddy Jenks did, but the union gave the last known town address as the Colossus. He would remain in the same district, around Times Square, reasoned Jenks. Let's page out the big buildings and see if he's not preparing to crash another one. Fair enough, said Linane, who was too busy with the problem at hand to choose his words. Together, the engineers started a canvass of the big buildings in the theatrical district. After 4 or 5 had been searched without result, they entered the 30-story Acme Theatre building. Here they learned that the Mad Musician had leased a 4-room suite just a few days before. This suite was on the 15th floor, just halfway up the big structure. They went to the manager of the building and frankly stated their suspicions. We want to enter that suite when the tenant's not there, they explained, and we want him forestalled from entering while we're examining the premises.
Hadn't we better notify the police? Asked the building manager, who had broken out in a sweat when he heard the dire disaster which might be in store for the stately Acme building.
Not yet, said Linane. You see, we're not sure. We just have been putting 2 and 2 together.
Well, we'll get the building detective anyway, insisted the manager.
Let him come along, but do not let him know until we are sure. If we're right, we will find a most unusual infernal machine, said Linane.
Man. The 3 men entered the suite with a pass key. The detective was left outside in the hall to halt anyone who might disturb the searchers. It was as Jenks had thought. In an inner room they found a diabolical machine, a single string stretched across 2 bridges, one of brass and one of wood. A big horsehair bow attached to a shaft operated by a motor was automatically sawing across the string. The note resulting was evidently higher than the range of the human ear because no audible sound resulted. It was later estimated that the destructive note was several octaves higher than the destructive note on a piano. The entire machine was enclosed in a heavy wire net cage, securely bolted to the floor. Neither the string nor bow could be reached. It was evidently the Mad Musician's idea that the devilish contrivance should not be reached by hands other than his own. How long the infernal machine had been operating no one knew, but the visitors were startled when the building suddenly began to sway perceptibly. Jenks jumped forward to stop the machine, but could not find a switch.
"See if the machine plugs in anywhere in a wall socket," he shouted to Linane, who promptly began examining the walls. Jenks shouted to the building manager to phone the police to clear the streets around the big building.
"Tell the police that Acme Theatre building may crash at any moment," he instructed.
The engineers were perfectly cool in face of the great peril, but the building manager lost his head completely and began to run around in circles, muttering, "Oh my God, save me," and other words of supplication that blended into an incoherent babble. Jenks rushed to the man, trying to still his wild hysteria. The building continued to sway dangerously. Jenks looked from a window. An enormous crowd was collecting, watching the big building swinging a foot out of plumb like a giant pendulum. The crowd was growing. "Hey, Boomin!" Should the building fall, the loss of life would be appalling. It was mid-morning. The interior of the building teemed with thousands of workers, for all floors above the 3rd were offices. Teddy Jenks turned suddenly. He heard the watchman in the hall scream in terror. Then he heard a body fall. He rushed to the door to see the Mad Musician standing over the prostrate form of the detective, a devilish grin upon his distorted countenance. The madman turned, saw Jenks, and started to run. Jenks took after him. Up the staircase, the madman rushed toward the roof. Teddy followed him 2 floors and then rushed out to take the elevators. The building, in its mad swaying, had made it impossible for the lifts to be operated. Teddy realized this with a distraught gulp in his throat. He returned to the stairway and took up the pursuit of the madman. The corridors were beginning to fill with screaming men and wailing girls. It was a sight never to be forgotten. Laboriously, Jenks climbed story after story without getting sight of the madman. Finally, he reached the roof. It was waving like swells on a lake before a breeze. He caught sight of the mad musician standing on the street wall, 30 stories from the street, a leer on his devilish visage. He jumped for him. The madman grasped him and lifted him up to the top of the wall as a cat might have lifted a mouse. Both men were breathing heavily as a result of their 15-story climb. The madman tried to throw Teddy Jenks to the street below. Teddy clung to him. The two battled desperately as the building swayed. The dense crowd in the street had caught sight of the two men fighting on the narrow coping, and the shout which rent the air reached the ears of Jenks. The mind of the engineer was still working clearly, but a wild fear gripped his heart. His strength seemed to be leaving him. The madman pushed him back, bending his spine with brute force. Teddy was forced to the narrow ledge that had given the two men footing. The fingers of the madman gripped his throat. He was dimly conscious that the swaying of the building was slowing down. His reason told him that Linane had found the wall socket and had stopped the sawing of the devil's bow on the engine of hell. He saw the madman draw a big knife. With his last remaining strength, he reached out and grasped the wrist above the hand which held the weapon. In spite of all he could do, he saw the madman inching the knife nearer and nearer his throat. Grim death was peering into the bulging eyes of Teddy Jenks when his engineering knowledge came to his rescue. He remembered the top stories of the Acme building were constructed with a step of 10 feet in from the street line for every corner of construction above the 24th floor. If we fall, he reasoned, we can only fall 1 story. Then he deliberately rolled his own body and the weight of the madman who held him over the edge of the coping. At the same time, he twisted the madman's wrist so the point of the knife pointed to the madman's body. There was a dim consciousness of a painful impact. Teddy had fallen underneath, but the force of the two bodies coming together had thrust the knife deep into the entrails of the mad musician. Clouds which had been collecting in the sky began a splattering downpour. The storm grew in fury and lightning. Oh, well, that's okay. This is where commas are nice. The storm grew in fury, and lightning tore the heavens, while thunder boomed and crackled. The rain began falling in sheets. This served to revive the unconscious Teddy. He painfully withdrew his body from under that of the madman. The falling rain, stained with the blood of the mad musician, trickled over the edge of the building. Teddy dragged himself through a window and passed his hand over his forehead, which was aching miserably. He tried to get his feet and fell back, only to try again. Several times he tried, and then, his strength returning, he was able to walk. He made his way to the studio where he had left Linane and found him there surrounded by police, reporters, and others. The infernal machine had been rendered harmless, but was kept intact as evidence. Catching sight of Teddy, Linane shouted with joy. "I stopped the damn thing," he chuckled like a pleased schoolboy. Then, observing Teddy's exhausted condition, he added, "Why, you look like you've been to a funeral." "I have," said Teddy. "You'll find that crazy fiddler dead on the 29th story. Look out the window of the 30th story," he instructed the police, who had started to recover the body. "He stabbed himself. He's either dead or dying." It proved that he was dead. No engineering firm is responsible for the actions of a madman, so the Muller Construction Company was given a clean bill of health. Jenks and Elaine Linane were with the girl's father in his study. They were asking for the paternal blessing. Didn't see that one coming. Never know. Linane was pretending to be hard to convince. "Now, my daughter," he said, "this young man takes $500 of my good money by sounding me out, as he calls it. Then he comes along and tries to take my daughter away from me. It's positively high-handed. It dates back to the football game.
Daddy, dear, don't be like that, said Elaine, who was on the arm of his chair, with her own arms around him. I tell you, Elaine, this dates back to the fall of 1927. It dates back to the fall of Eve, said Elaine. When a girl finds her man, no power can keep him from her. If he won't give me to Teddy Jenks, I'll elope with him. Well, all right then. Kiss me, said Elaine, as he turned towards his radio set. 1 and 1 makes 1, said Teddy Jenks. Every engineer knows his mathematics. All right, that was kind of a weird story. That one. That was, that was straight up pulpy. I don't know what. I don't know what. Where is? What are we looking for? What do I have? Where is it? Cool. Oh, who wrote that? Oh, I'm trying to remember who wrote it. Oh, I forgot. Oh, come on. Kubla Khan. Just pulling up something real fast here. No, wrong one. Yeah, so that was an okay story. It wasn't the best one. Not the best one. What is... Oh, that's weird. Maybe I called it something else. Z-A-N-A. No. Under Kohler. Complete works. What's this? Oh, that's Christabel. That's not what we wanted. Alright, one sec. Let's try Kohler Edge. This has got the worst formatting ever. In this one here. Where is search? Wow, I can't find anything in this. This is terrible formatting in this. Everything's just been given... This is going to end on something else, but it's not making it easy to find, that's for sure. Wow, okay. No, that was, I thought I could find something fun there by Coleridge, but no. What is this? This is, that's 35 pages. That'd be too long to end like that. So, yeah, I'm not quite sure how to end the day. Not quite sure how we're going to do this. We got time for a little something more. Hey, Mr. Q-Tip, how you doing? Oh, AJ says, I don't know, you had to think of Kafka in this weird machine. Yeah. Penal colony. Don't know that one. All right, let me just look it up real fast. Actually, no. Let's just make a quick. No, I was gonna do that one, but no, let's not do that. All right. You know, I was gonna find something that we already got here. Good to go. It's got to be something short and sweet. Yeah, just something to end the day with. Let's see. Maybe something by Hans Christian Andersen. We're working our way through that one.
Oh, that's the first old man. Oh, there's a whole bunch of stuff. Okay, one second. The story of the fisherman. Okay, no, I don't think that's going to be suitable either, actually. Which is kind of weird. What's in the Book of Wonder? Oh yeah, we got some weird stories in here. The house, have they done that? What's the Horde of the Gibberlins? Yeah, let's do this one. Okay, okay, we're just going to end with a little short story by Lord Dunsany, just because he's one of my favorites. Very good. Uh-oh. So we had some kind of weird network error on Twitch, but that's okay. Oh, wrong button. Hitting all the wrong buttons. Here we come. Here we go. We're just going to... I'm finished with this one here. Here's a little... Okay, let me catch up with... just in case I missed anything on chat. I had the wrong window up. And, yeah, you're joining at the end. We got one more. We got one more coming. One more coming there, Mr. Tip. And actually, usually I don't even read on Friday. Because, my voice is killing me by the time I get to Thursday. Yeah, Monday through Thursday is where we get to. So we've got one more short story. It's a special week this week. Special week. There's people stuck at home and will be for some time. So that's why we're doing this. There we go. Yeah, you know, I don't know that much of Kafka's stories there, AJ. I really liked his Hunger Artist. That's really good. Actually, I made a recording of that one. Metamorphosis. That's actually the only two I think I know of. Off the top of my head, actually, those are the only two I could think of. But yeah, strange fella. But yeah, actually, I wouldn't mind looking up some more of it. I would read something from our best Russian short stories, but every single one of them is so depressing. So depressing. Everything is depressing in Russia. All right. The process and the penal colony are the only ones that you know. All right. Yeah. I'll have to look into some more of that, because I really do like what I've read by him. Oh, did he do the trial? Was that Dostoevsky? I don't know. I get all my people muddled up. All right. Hey, Rose. Rose Wolf is with us. This is it. This is our last story of the day. Then I got to go do some stuff, and I'll be back because it's the weekend, 4 p.m. Pacific, for some gaming. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be real good. Real good. Let's do it. Let's, in we come. By Lord Dunsany. Here we go. How one came, as was foretold, to the city of Never. The child that played about the terraces and gardens in sight of the Surrey hills never knew that it was he that should come to the ultimate city. Never knew that he should see the underpits, the barbicans, and the holy minarets of the mightiest city known. I think of him now as a child with a little red watering can, going about the gardens on a summer's day that lit the warm south country, his imagination delighted with all tales of quite little adventures. And all the while there was reserved for him that feat at which men wonder. Looking in other directions, away from the Surrey hills, through all his infancy he saw that precipice, that wall above wall, and mountain above mountain, standing at the edge of the world, and in perpetual twilight, alone with the moon and the sun
holding up the inconceivable city of Never. To tread its streets, he was destined. Prophecy knew it. He had the magic halter, and a worn old rope it was. An old wayfaring woman had given it to him. It had the power to hold any animal whose race had never known captivity, such as the unicorn, the hippogriff, Pegasus, dragons, and wyverns. But with a lion, giraffe, camel, or horse, it was useless. How often we have seen that city of Never, that marvel of the nations. Not when it is night in the world, and we can see no further than the stars. Not when the sun is shining where we dwell, dazzling our eyes. But when the sun has set on some stormy days, all at once repentant at evening, and those glittering cliffs reveal themselves, which we almost take to be clouds, and it is twilight with us, as it is forever with them. Then, on their gleaming summits, we see those golden domes that overpeer the edges of the world, and seem to dance with dignity and calm in that gentle light of evening that is wonder's native haunt. Then does the city of Never, unvisited and afar, look long at her sister, the world. It had been prophesied that he should come there. They knew it when the pebbles were being made, and before the isles of coral were given unto the sea. And thus the prophecy came unto fulfillment, and passed into history, and so at length to oblivion, out of which I drag it as it goes floating by, into which I shall one day tumble. The hippogriffs dance before dawn in the upper air. Long before sunrise flashes upon our lawns, they go to glitter in light that has not yet come to the world. And as the dawn works up from the ragged hills, and the stars feel it, they go slanting earthwards till sunlight touches the tops of the tallest trees, and the hippogriffs alight with a rattle of quills, and fold their wings, and gallop and gambol away till they come to some prosperous, wealthy, detestable town. And they leap at once from the fields and soar away from the sight of it, pursued by the horrible smoke of it, until they come again to the pure blue air. He whom prophecy had named from of old to come to the city of Never, went down one midnight with his magic halter to a lakeside, where the hippogriffs alighted at dawn. For the turf was soft there, and they could gallop far before they came to a town. And there he waited, hidden near their hoof marks. And the stars paled a little and grew indistinct. But there was no other sign as yet of the dawn, when there appeared, far up in the deeps of the night, two little saffron specks. Then 4 and 5. It was the hippogriffs dancing and twirling around in the sun. Another flock joined them. There were 12 of them now. They danced there, flashing their colors back to the sun. They descended in wide curves slowly. Trees down on earth revealed against the sky, jet black each delicate twig. A star disappeared from a cluster. Now another. And dawn came on like music, like a new song. Ducks shot by to the lake from still dark fields of corn. Far voices uttered, A color grew upon water, and still the hippogriffs gloried in the light, reveling up in the sky. But when pigeons stirred on the branches, and the first small bird was abroad, and little coots from the rushes ventured to peer about, then there came down on a sudden, with a thunder of feathers, the hippogriffs. And as they landed from their celestial heights, all bathed with the day's first sunlight, the man whose destiny it was, as from old, to come to the city of Never, sprang up and caught the last with the magic halter. It plunged, but could not escape it, for the hippogriffs are of the uncaptured races, and magic has power over the magical. So the man mounted it, and it soared again for the heights whence it had came, as a wounded beast goes home. But when they came to the heights, that venturous rider saw huge and fair to the left of him the destined city of Never. And he beheld the towers of Lel and Lek, Nerib and Akathuma, and the cliffs of Toldanarba, a-glistening in the twilight like an alabaster statue of the evening. Towards them he wrenched the halter, towards Toldanarba and the underpits. The wings of the hippogriff roared as the halter turned him. Of the underpits, who shall tell? Their mystery is secret. It is held by some that they are the sources of night, and that darkness pours from them at evening upon the world, while others hint that knowledge of these might undo our civilization. There watched him ceaselessly from the underpits those eyes whose duty it is. From further within and deeper, the bats that dwell there arose when they saw the surprise in the eyes. The sentinels on the bulwarks beheld that stream of bats, and lifted up their spears as if it were for war. Nevertheless, when they perceived that war for which they watched was not now come upon them, they lowered their spears, and suffered him to enter, and he passed, whirring through the earthward gateway. Even so he came, as foretold, to the city of Never, perched upon Toldanarba, and saw late twilight on those pinnacles that knew no other light. All the domes were of copper, but the spires on their summits were gold. Little steps of onyx ran all this way and that. With cobbled agates were its streets a-glory. Through small square panes of rose-courts the citizens looked from their houses. To them, as they looked abroad, the world far off seemed happy. Clad though that city was in one robe always, in twilight, yet was its beauty worthy of even so lovely a wonder. City and twilight were both peerless, but for each other. Built of a stone unknown in the world we tread were its bastions, quarried we knew not where, but called by the gnomes abyx. It so flashed back to the twilight its glories, color for color, that none can say of them where their boundary is, and which the eternal twilight, and which the city of Never. They are the twin-born children, the fairest daughters of wonder. Time had been there, but not to work destruction. He had turned to a fair pale green the domes that were made of copper. The rest he had left untouched, even he, the destroyer of cities. By what bribe I know not,
averted. Nevertheless, they often wept in Never for change and passing away, mourning catastrophes in other worlds. And they built temples sometimes to ruined stars that had fallen, flaming down from the Milky Way, giving them worship still when by us long since forgotten. Other temples they have, who knows to what divinities? And he that was destined alone of men to come to the city of Never was well content to behold it, as he trotted down its agate street, with the wings of his hippogriff furled, seeing at either side of him marvel on marvel, of which even China is ignorant. Then, as he neared the city's further rampart by which no inhabitant stirred, and looked in a direction to which no houses faced with any rose-pink windows, he suddenly saw far off, dwarfing the mountains, an even greater city. Whether that city was built upon the twilight, or whether it rose from the coasts of some other world, he did not know. Lost my place. Oh, yeah, there it is. Whether that city was built upon the twilight, or whether it rose from the coasts of some other world, he did not know. He saw it dominate the city of Never, and strove to reach it. But at this unmeasured home of unknown colossi, the hippogriff shied frantically, and neither the magic halter nor anything that he did could make the monster face it. At last, from the city of Never's lonely outskirts, where no inhabitants walked, the rider turned slowly earthward. He knew now why all the windows faced this way. The denizens of the twilight gazed at the world, and not at a greater than them. Then from the last step of the earthward stairway, like lead, past the underpits, and down the glittering face of Toldenarba, down from the overshadowed glories of the gold-tipped city of Never, and out of perpetual twilight, swooped the man on his winged monster. The wind that slept at the time leapt up like a dog at their onrush. It uttered a cry and ran past them. Down on the world it was morning. Night was roaming away, with his cloak trailed behind him. White mists turned over and over as he went. The orb was gray, but glittered. Lights blinked surprisingly in early windows. Forth over wet, dim fields went cows from their houses. Even in this hour touched the fields again the feet of the hippogriff. And the moment that the man dismounted and took off his magic halter, the hippogriff flew slanting away with a whir, going back to some airy dancing place of his people. And he that surmounted glittering Toldenarba, and came alone of men to the city of Never, has had his name and his fame among nations. But he and the people of that twilit city well know two things, unguessed by other men. They, that there is another city, fairer than theirs, and he, a deed unaccomplished. And that is where we leave our stream today. That's it. Hope you enjoyed the little bonus book club there. That's it. We're done. No more. That's all they wrote. All they wrote. So I must bid you all adieu.
we will be back later today, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern for some gaming. It's going to be some gears. It's going to be a good time. It's going to be a good time. Thank you, Shadowtronics, for keeping everyone in line. Thank you for the stream dono too. We had that was Shadowtronics and Megan. I don't know who Megan is. Yeah, it doesn't match up with any anyone in the chatter list that I'm familiar with. But thank you as well. That's very kind. AJ, you are very welcome. You are very well. I'm just glad you enjoyed it. Glad you enjoyed it. Anyway, I'm probably not going to be reading tomorrow because I need to do something in my studio, something I'm behind in. Sunday, of course, we have Short Story Sunday, which is going to be pretty cool. Short stories, poems. Maybe, I believe, maybe we're going to have a piece from Mr. SoCal Aussie, who's a from time to time contributor to the creative writing side of Short Story Sunday. I'll have to go ask him. But there we go. In the meantime, have a great day, everyone. Have a great day. Let us let's roll our just quickly roll. Here we go. I'm gonna end it right here. There we go. Just roll these bad boys up here. Take a little look. See if we need to get any feedback to Mr. Pixel here. Oh boy, there's yeah. See, there's a lot of yeah. I think a lot of names are left out of these. I'm not sure how it picks them all, but there we go. AJ's been yapping up a storm. Good gracious. Halo Collector, nice. Shadowtronics, of course, here. Too early for Lady Death. Oh, a bunch of sparks came in. Metal Guru, Halo Collector, Shadowtronics, AJ, Tillable Cat, and Stunted Blunt. Nice. Stunted Blunt. Had some stickers thrown around. Very good. There was definitely more than one waffle sticker. I know for sure there was definitely more than one waffle sticker. Yeah, there's something's a little squirrely with all that. We got a new follower from Mr. Smoky Cash. Thank you for that. And a bunch of hosts. So Spasmatic, Shadowtronics, Devil's Fist was here. Maybe I'm on an auto host from some of these. Oh, Jelly Buns. It's always nice to see Jelly Buns here too. AJ, thank you for that. Ordained Pit, he was in here. Orgon showed up right towards the end. I didn't say hello, Orgon. Sorry, Orgon Kills Evil is here. That's right. No, I saw you come in there, but I was kind of on a roll with the reading there, and I was like, I'm going to say hi to them once we finish this, and I never did. So, thank you, Orgon Kills Evil. It's good to see you again. And I'm sorry I didn't say hi earlier. But there we go. That is the end of our stream. We are going to, looks like Orgon might be gone already. Oh, hope he didn't feel jilted. That is it. We are done. We'll see you in about 3 hours. Gears of War 5, if anyone is interested. And, I don't know, we'll try some other stuff as well while we're at it. We'll just have a good time with it. See you later, and, yeah. Wash your hands and don't go licking anyone's faces. All right.